Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatil min lisani yafqahu qawli. So our today's topic is permeability. So in permeability we will be dealing with passage of water through a soil medium. So if we talk about the general definition, so permeability is a measure of how easily a fluid can pass through a porous medium. And generally in our discussions that fluid is water. So in our today's topic we will be seeing how easily or how difficultly water or any other fluid can pass through a soil medium. So if you can see the figure here, you see it has been shown that we have different particles here. These brown colors are the soil particles, and water is flowing through the voids in between them. So sometime the path is different, and sometime path is, you see, like this one here. This one is very treacherous, so it has moved all the way. So definitely this one would take much longer time, and if it's a straight path, so it will take lesser time. So flow actually happens through the soil because of these interconnected voids inside the soil. Because of the interconnection of the voids, water will flow through the soil medium. And actually no soil is really impermeable. Impermeable means it does not allow any water to pass through it, and permeable mean it allows water to pass through it. So in reality every soil allows, no matter how impermeable it is, but it allows still some amount of water to pass through it. Now generally the question might come that why would water pass, or why would water flow through soil? So the basic reason is that flow occurs from high energy to low energy. That is the rule of nature, that anything at higher temperature or a higher energy would move to a lower energy. So generally what happens is that if we have this let's say soil layer here, and this is all saturated and it is filled with water, so everything is in peace. Now this is the ground surface here, and we construct a building here. So this whole area, this is under stress. So once the stress is coming, so that means the energy of the water is going to increase. Now but this portion that is outside this stress zone, so let me share it up. So this whole is stress zone, and the water outside is is not stressed. And we know that due to high stress it has more, and water particles will bear more energy. And if you remember the Terzaghi's one-dimensional consolidation theory, all the load or all the stress is initially taken up by the water. So as all the load stress is taken by water, it results in increasing the energy of the water, and as a result water starts to flow from high energy to this lower energy in all directions. All right, so that's why we are more interested in permeability, because it plays a very, very important role in all the understanding of the soil. Generally gravels have a very good permeability, and by a good permeability I mean they allow water to easily pass through them. So generally gravels have permeability from 10 centimeter per second to 10 to minus 3 centimeter per second. So gravels and sands both obviously have permeability in this range, and that means they have minimum resistance to the flow of water. As compared to gravels and sands, silts and clays, they offer a maximum resistance to flow of water. That means they are very impermeable. Theoretically impermeable mean that they do not allow water to pass through it, but as we have discussed already, that no matter how impermeable soil is, but it still allows few or small amount of water to pass through it. So but for our definition we can say that clays and silts are almost impermeable, and they have a permeability that is having a range of 10 to minus 6 centimeter per second. That is the rate of flow of water. So now a question comes that why we need to measure permeability. So permeability can be used and most importantly permeability is indicated by the symbol K. Please remember this, that permeability is represented by symbol K. Now why do we need to find out permeability? So for the design of drainage system for any construction site or any place, we need to know the permeability. If you want to lower water for an area or for construction purposes, then once again you need the information of permeability, that what is the value of permeability in the area that you're working. And we want to estimate the well yields and the design of tube well. For all that you need permeability. For design of relief wells, to know the rate of consolidation, as we have already seen in the example, that the water will flow out from the stress zone. So if it has a good permeability, that high energy water will immediately move out and we will have quick consolidation. Otherwise, if the permeability is low, it will take months or years for that water to move out. So permeability directly affects consolidation. And then water pumping for underground construction. So if we are lowering water table and we have to pump water out, so the rate at which water comes out or the rate at which water table is lowered, it will again once again depend on the permeability of the soil. And then lastly, seepage velocity through soil mass. If we want to know that you have constructed a dam or a levee or any other embankment structure, and you want to know that how fast seepage water is going to move through that body, so once again we need permeability knowledge to do that. These are not the only things that we can do, or for what we need to find a permeability. There is a list of things for which you need permeability, but we have obviously limited us for these 7 examples. While we are talking about permeability, so basically it is flow of water through the soil medium. So while we're discussing flow of water, we need to discuss 2 important flows conditions. One is laminar flow and the other is turbulent flow. So the laminar flow is the fluid particles traveling along a definite path and they do not cross each other's path. And a turbulent flow is the one where path of fluid particles are irregular and twisting across and they're crossing each other at random. So laminar flows is that if water is traveling, so they will be traveling in the same direction. They won't interconnect. If water is traveling, it will happen like this. In case of turbulent flow, this can be the shape. They are interconnecting and they are crossing each other's path. So this one is laminar and this one is turbulent flow. Generally in soil we have laminar flow because the speed we will just have a look at the graph, but this happens as lower speed and this happens at a higher speed. Okay, turbulent flows are generally related with higher speeds or higher velocities of water flow, whereas laminar flows are related with the slower velocities of water flow. So in soil, because we have a lot of resistance, because of this water has passed through all these solid particles, because water has to pass through the voids between the solid particles, so definitely the speed of flow of water is very less in case of soils, and we can generally relate it with the laminar flow. So while we were talking about the energy of the any fluid particle that is moving across the soil medium or anywhere, so it is we can indicate its energy with the total head, and total head is equal to velocity head plus pressure head plus elevation head. Now velocity, as we've already discussed, that velocity of flow is very, very slow in case of soils, because because we know that these are the solid particles and water can only flow through the void spaces. So you see this is a treacherous path and it takes definitely longer time. So we can say that velocity head can be neglected, and we can say that total head is equal to pressure head plus elevation head once we are discussing the fluid flow through the soil medium. This is an example, general example. So you see this is water body and we have a dam here and fluid is flowing from here to here, fluid flow. So it will have energy. This is the datum head or the elevation head, and plus the amount of pressure it will have at the time. We can say that okay, this is the pressure head. So we add them up to find out the total head that is going to cause the flow of the fluid particles through the soil. So Bernoulli's equation is written as total head is equal to pressure head plus elevation head plus velocity head, and we already know that this is 0. So for soils, so pore pressure can be indicated by pore pressure of the soil over gamma W, and elevation head is simply the height above the datum for which we are referencing. Then we have a very important term that is called as hydraulic gradient. So it is the line joining pressure heads at the beginning and end of a section, or simply we can say that it's the loss of head per unit length of flow. So we have already seen or discussed that while the water is flowing from the soil medium, what is going to happen is that it has to overcome all the resistance offered by the solid particles. Okay, so in overcoming that resistance, a lot of energy or a lot of head is lost. So that's why when water enters, so if this is a soil medium and these are the solid particles. So water has to pass through from here, maybe anywhere from here. So here it had a higher energy, and here in all that way traveling and in turning path and in resisting the solid, it lost a lot of energy, and we will have a lower head at the end. So when water flows from a soil section from one side to other, it loses energy, and that loss in energy is called as the hydraulic gradient. So if it is indicated by this brown color section here, you see this one. This is the soil indicated by the brown color. Its section starts from A to B, and the water head at the start is indicated by HA, and the water head at the end of the section is indicated by HB. So the difference in head in the two is indicated as H. So this is called as the loss in head. So if we want to know the loss in head, so just a minute, it can be indicated by this Bernoulli's equation. Just a minute. So this one is here. So total head, yes. So total head at A is, this is the elevation head ZA, this is the pressure head PA over gamma W, and this is velocity head VA square over 2G. And obviously we are neglecting this in case of our soils. So the difference in head HA minus HB, or simply indicated by small h, by subtracting these two values. Then we have this term hydraulic gradient. So hydraulic gradient is equal to H over L, where H is the loss in head and L is this length of the cross section through which through which the water has passed. So here is this chart here. This is a very important chart. On x-axis we have hydraulic gradient, and on y-axis we have velocity. So as the velocity is increasing, or hydraulic gradient is also increasing, so you see here the flow is laminar up to a certain value of velocity and head, and as this is increasing, then we come in the transition zone. And when the flow increases, when the velocity increases too much and the hydraulic gradient increases too much, the flow becomes turbulent. So please remember that at lower velocities we have a laminar flow, and at higher velocities we have turbulent flow, and it has almost a direct relationship. With increase in velocity, there is an increase in hydraulic gradient, and you can say that V is directly proportional to I, but obviously up to the zone 2, which is between laminar and transition zone, and after that relationship does not hold for, but we can say that for laminar flow, velocity is directly proportional to hydraulic gradient, and it can be converted to equation by this is V is equal to Ki, where K is the permeability of that soil. Okay. So this is called as Darcy's law, that V is equal to Ki, and we know that this is constant of proportionality, and the units of K is centimeter per second. Now here are some few values of permeability, but they obviously are just an idea, but they cannot be labeled or restricted to any soil that you have. You have to, for any particular case that you are dealing with, so you have to find out permeability, but this is generally for guideline. So clays and cells have permeability of 10 to the power minus 6. This is centimeter per second. Gravels have 10 to the power 0, that means 1 centimeter per second. So sands and cells have this 10 minus 3. So just for a rough idea, you can say that we have permeability range from gravels of 10 up to 10 to the minus 6 for clays and cells. So this is a little important. We will have a relationship between discharge and seepage velocity. So area available for passage of flow of water is AV. So we know that if we have a soil medium, so we have solid particles, right? And it is through the interconnectivity of the voids that water flows happens. So this is the water flow. So this is the interconnectivity that water will flow. But water only flows, so not only in this direction, from this void it will flow. So water will find each and every void, and it will cover and move out of it. So area available for flow, so if I draw the cross section, so this is the solid particles. So water can flow only through the void space, because obviously So water can flow only through here. Okay, right? Because the solid particles will not are like hurdles that do not allow flow of water. So flow of water only happens through the void space, and the area of the voids can be indicated by AV. So this is the, in a particular cross section, if this hole is an area, is the area of cross section of the soil sample, then AV is the area of the voids through which flow can happen. Okay, so if Vs is the velocity of flow through the voids and V is the average velocity, so for the cross section we can say that Q is equal to AV. Q is flow, amount of flow Q is equal to area into velocity of flow, and V is the average velocity. But if we see that the flow happens only through the void spaces, so that area is AV, and the speed of seepage velocity or the speed of flow through the voids is Vs. So we can say that total discharge, this is equal to Q. It is the average velocity into the average velocity over the total cross-sectional area of the sample, and it is equal to the area of the voids and the speed of, or the velocity of flow through the voids, that is Vs. If we rearrange it, so we can say that velocity of flow through the voids Vs is equal to A over AV into V. And from the knowledge of porosity, we know that porosity is equal to volume of voids over volume, and that is equal to AV over A, that is area of the voids over A, because if it multiply H over H, so H cancels out. So A over AV is equal to 1 over N, and we know that that is equal to 1 plus E over E, so we plug that value here. So we have this relationship here between the discharge velocity of water based on the cross section and the seepage velocity, that is the velocity of flow through the voids. So Vs is equal to 1 plus E over E into the average velocity V, and Vs is the seepage velocity. So please remember this equation. You might need to use that in calculation of your numerical formulas. If you have still any questions related to the procedure that we have, the relationship that we developed, so we can discuss in our class, live class. Now we have a look at the factors affecting permeability. So there are a lot of factors that is affecting permeability. First of all is the size of the grain. If we have larger grains, obviously they will not allow much permeability, and especially the particle size, particle shape, if we talk about it, if they have angular particles, they result in more permeability as compared to rounded particles. And especially if we talk about clays, so we know that clays are negatively charged and they are elongated, and the clays have a absorbed water layer around it. So that absorbed water layer is attracted to the clay negatively charged particle, and it causes obstruction to the flow of water. When the water tries to flow through it, so it offers a lot of resistance. So that's why we have very less permeability in case of clays due to this negatively charged and this absorbed water layer. And then we have properties of fluid flow. If the temperature is higher, so that means its viscosity will change. So as the viscosity of flow of the fluid changes, so does the velocity, and so does the permeability is affected by the temperature of the fluid. Void ratio of the soil, we've already seen that that if the void ratio is higher, so there will be, if it will be affecting the value of flow, it can be indicated from this equation here, that is directly depending on the void ratio of the soil. And shape arrangement of the pores, so if we have more interconnected voids, then the flow is easier, but if there's a distorted path, tortuous path for the flow of water, then obviously permeability will be lesser. And generally flocculated structures have more permeability than the dispersed structures. Lastly, with degree of saturation, so if the soil is saturated, okay, then what will happen, the water flow will happen easily. So if this is the soil sample and these are the solid particles, and if this hole is saturated, water can easily flow through it. But if we have pockets of air voids, that means it is not saturated, that means we have pocket of air voids. So this air void is going to cause obstruction to the flow of water. This will not allow water to flow through it, then water has to change path and look for the place where there is no pocket of air void. So if we have a lesser degree of saturation, then the air spaces between the voids are going to cause blockage to the flow, and it will result in the lower permeability. So if we have 100% saturated soil, that means there is no air in between the voids, that means the flow will take very easily. While talking about the factors affecting permeability, we have a direct relationship. We will discuss it again in a while, that permeability is directly related to C into D10. C is a factor, but D10 is the effective diameter of the soil particles through which the flow is happening. And generally we can say that horizontal permeability is 10 times greater than the vertical permeability. So in a soil medium, we can have a different permeability in any direction. So roughly you can say that if you don't have any numerical values, you can say that horizontal permeability is 10 times the vertical permeability. Now we talk about the methods determining permeability. So there are direct method and indirect method. Indirect method is, first one is called as Allen-Hazen formula. We have already seen that, that is K is equal to C into D10 square. D10 is the effective diameter. We have already seen how to calculate from the sieve analysis, go for the 10% passing, and that T is D10, okay, from the sieve analysis chart. And C value generally 90 to 120, and 100 is generally used as an average value. Second method is from the consolidation test. So from the consolidation test, permeability can be directly find out by K is equal to CV MV into gamma W. CV is the coefficient of consolidation, MV is the coefficient of volume change, and gamma W is the unit of water. But this only works for permeability less than 10 to the minus 7 centimeter per second. That means only for clay soils we can find out permeability through the consolidation test. Now we come to the direct method. So in direct method we have lab methods and we have field methods. So first we'll discuss lab methods. So in lab methods we have constant head permeability test. Constant head permeability test is for coarse grained soils, and falling head permeability test is for the fine grained soils. So here is a little schematics for this diagram here. I'll try to explain it a little bit, but I'm sure you have already performed that in your labs. So this is the soil sample here. This brown color is the soil sample. This is the soil sample, and here is also the soil sample. So first we will talk about this one here, that is the constant head permeability test. So in a constant head permeability test, as the name suggests, that we maintain a constant head over the soil sample. Okay, so what we will do, we will maintain a constant head on top of the soil sample. If I try to draw a very simple diagram, so I'll draw it like this, that we have, these are the porous stones, this is the soil sample, and I have maintained a constant head on the top. So let's say this is the reservoir, this is the outflow. So that means there is a constant, I'll do colors so it's easier to understand. So this is the soil specimen. Okay, this is the soil specimen, and this is the, just a minute, it's a little bit stuck. Okay, so this is the outlet valve, and this is the collection jar, and here we have the stopwatch. So what we are going to do is that we will fill the reservoir with water, and then we will see it here. Okay, so there is constant water coming from the top, and any excess water will fall out. So that means the head, this is the total head from the center of the soil specimen. So this head is fixed on top of the soil. So this happens, we turn on the tap and any excess water will fall out. So that means the head on the top of the specimen is constant. So once we have constant, once we have this situation, what we'll do, we will turn on the tap, okay, and we will note the time, and we will note the volume that is being filled, and it is indicated by Q. Q is equal to volume per unit time. So this is discharge. So this is the discharge we have to calculate. Maybe you can calculate maybe over 10 minutes, or maybe you can calculate based on a fixed volume. So we will find out discharge. L is the length of the specimen, okay, H is the head, and capital A is the area of cross section of the sample. So in this way you can find out the permeability from the constant head test. This works only for coarse grained soils. Now the second method is the falling head test. In the falling head test, we will I will repeat, I'll again draw the sample, that is more easier to understand. So this is the soil specimen, this is the porous stone, and once again we have the outlet works here, and then we have the collection jar, and then we again have the stopwatch. But here we have a small standpipe. Small standpipe means it's a small glass jar. So what we are going to do is, just a minute. Okay, so we are going to fill this with water up to a certain height. Okay, and just a minute, it's again stuck a little bit. So we have the soil specimen here. So we have filled this, sorry, it should have been going up to here. Let me redo this. You'll draw it here. So this is the initial head H1. So this is from the top of head to the center of the specimen, and where we will note the volume, and we'll note the time, that how much time will it take for the discharge to happen. So we will note after a while what will happen. This water table will be lowered down because there is no source of supply. So after a while, so this will be the new head, that is H2. So simply we have a standpipe, we fill with water, and then we will use a saturated soil specimen, and we will start seeing the discharge and the amount of water that is collected in that time. So from there you can calculate the discharge. So the formula is 2.3 A L over AT log H1 over H2. H1 and H2 are the heads at the start of the test, and at the end of the test, capital A is this area of cross section of the soil specimen. If I draw it, it will be this area A. Small a is the area of the standpipe in which we are measuring. L is the length of the specimen, total length of the specimen, and T is the time in which we have seen the head fall from H1 to H2. So we simply plug in the values, and you will have your value of permeability for a fine grained soil. So we have actually tables calculation shown here that will help it further understand the process of calculation of permeability from the falling head and the constant head test. So for the calculation of constant head test, we will note the H that is kept constant on the top of the soil specimen. T is the time collected, and from here we calculate the volume of water collected in the jar. From here you can find out the discharge Q, know the temperature T, and then apply the formula to find out the permeability, and at last we apply the temperature correction. There is a complete table available that you might have seen in your lab manuals that will help you find out the correction for the permeability for the temperature of water. In a falling head test, we will note the H1 value and H2, and then find out log H1, H2. T is the time collected, T is the temperature. Plug in the values, you will find out the permeability, and lastly you can find out the temperature correction for the temperature at which you are finding out the permeability for the soil. So after this we will discuss the field method. In field we can measure permeability by two methods. First one is called as pumping out of wells, or simply pumping out test, and then we have pumping into wells. So first, looking at the pumping out test, we have two methods for the pumping out test. First one is for an unconfined aquifer, and the second one is for a confined aquifer. So before starting this, we will have to go through a list of definitions. So the first thing is called as well. So well, it is a vertical cylindrical perforated hydraulic structure that taps groundwater from the soil voids. So simply, once we have this ground surface and we know that there is a water bearing stratum that is filled with water, and you might have seen in your houses that you make a borehole inside the ground and then you pump water out of it. So this structure that we are creating, this is called as the well, that is used to pump out water or tap out water, groundwater from the ground below. Now aquifer, a water bearing stratum of soil, it's a pervious soil layer. This is not soot, this is soil. Sorry, please do the correction. So The water is because in some areas where the water tables are high, people pump out water from the ground. Like here in Gujranwala, we have this borehole inside the ground, and it pumps water from a depth maybe 100 feet or 150 feet below the ground. And how the water is coming out? Because we have an aquifer there. So aquifer is a soil that is generally a sandy soil that is filled with water, and we pump out water from that. Okay, so that is an aquifer. It's a water bearing stratum of soil. It's a pervious layer, and pervious layer means that it's a sandy or a gravelly soil that is fully saturated, that is containing water in the voids. And we will bore our well up to that value, and it will pump out water from that aquifer. And generally aquifer have a source of water from which water is being continuously being filled in the aquifer, because once we are pumping out, does not dry us out, but due to constant source of water, it will have still saturation in it, inside it. After aquifer, we have this gravity or ordinary wells. So a gravity or ordinary well is a water surface inside and outside the well is under atmospheric pressures. Then water is not being pumped. So that means the water inside the aquifer and the water inside the well is going to be at the same atmospheric pressure. So I'll try to draw that here on the side to explain the difference between gravity well and artesian well. Just a minute.